everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Phyllis overreacts with an agitated Kane after Holden makes an accusation. Diane is having a lovely Italian evening when Jack gets home. She always knows what he needs, he beams. They kiss. They chat about Harrison's impending return from Milan while Jack recites some Italian proverbs and remarks on the similar calm that exists now. It appears that Harrison has picked up the accordion. They imagine Venice, slow dance, and toast. Jack's announcement that Kyle and Claire intend to move in together pleases Diane. She is certain that the blonde will no longer want to interact with her granddad. Jack complains about Victor for a while before telling him to keep an eye on Kane and his fixation. Diane notes that they must ascertain the nature of that preoccupation. After that, they get fixated on Kane's activities. Jack tells his wife that Ashby almost took Chancellor from Nikki, but he reassures her that they are safe from hostile takeovers. Turning around, they still wish to go on a honeymoon. Jack and Diane will go anyplace. They canoodle and kiss. Jack Diane. Who is assisting who? Claire thanks Tessa for the gelato at the Overlook. They talk about Cole's passing before the subject of Mariah invariably comes up. Tessa breaks the news that she moved out and they are no longer together because Claire isn't aware of it. She clarifies that she doesn't know what her wife did that caused them to part ways. Claire offers to help Aria because she detests seeing her go through this alone. Tessa discloses that she has been receiving assistance. When the conversation shifts to Kyle, Claire tells that he has returned from France at last. And things are worse somehow. They go to society after deciding they need something more potent than gelato for this conversation. Who irks Holden? Holden provides Kane with an update on his real estate holdings while he is traveling by train. Holden disconnects as Daniel enters the pub in society and claims to have heard him conversing with Kane Ashby. He jokes that he doesn't care who he harms while climbing. They argue verbally about Ashby, and Daniel confesses that they both harmed Lily, their ex-wife. Holden reveals that he was recently rehired after having worked for Kane as Dumas. After exchanging names, Holden finds out that Daniel is worried about his mother, who has sided with his boss. Daniel Holden. Holden acknowledges that he was unaware that his mother was employed by Kane. He is still attempting to determine his place in the company. He is certain that Daniel is more familiar with Ashby than he is. They talk about the hardships of unemployment. Holden is hopeful that this chance would enable him to fulfill his ambition. What's your goal? Daniel asks. Holden is agitated and accuses him of digging for Kane's soil. Holden. After Daniel calms Holden down, he admits that he wants to start a club. By mentioning that they could use another hip club in town, Daniel gains a lifelong buddy. Holden starts flirting as Tessa and Claire show there, claiming that his night has improved significantly. Holden orders a round of Vespers while Claire and Daniel are chit-chatting about Harrison going home and Summer staying in Italy. Daniel has that glitter in his eye when he and Tessa exchange a private glance. Daniel. They all choke down the extremely potent Vespers as they move to a table, and Daniel offers Claire his sympathies. After learning that he lost his partner, Heather, this year, Holden muses that losing a loved one is the hardest thing in the world. Tessa discloses that she may be nearing the end of her relationship with her soulmate. Holden says they are all in mourning because he buried his best friend today. Claire reassures him that he will find someone else to rely on while everyone offers their condolences. He seems to want it to be her based on his look. Will Phyllis go too far? Kane finds it difficult to write a text message to Matty and Charlie on his train, requesting an opportunity to put things right. To commemorate the coronation of Genoa City's new royalty, Phyllis shows up with a bottle of bubbly. Kane tries to warn her that it's not a good time, but the Phyllis Express cannot be stopped. She swears that she had seen Nick after popping and pouring. The Newmans are terrified of Kane. Kane still doesn't feel like celebrating. Kane Phyllis. After learning that Kane has betrayed his children's confidence, Phyllis reassures him that she is an authority in the field. She pretended to be dead, so at least he pretended to be alive. Before raising a glass to children and their tenacity, she gives the advice, just do better. Kane. Both Kane and Phyllis acknowledge that they prefer to force things to happen and lack patience. She reveals that she saw Lily earlier just as they are starting to get along. Kane demands specifics. Phyllis acknowledges that she wanted to lift his spirits after the meeting. Ashby attempts to thank her for her concern in a formal manner. He says to her, "I think we are a lot alike," but he quickly clarifies that they are not equals or partners. She is not his king's queen. This appears to be accepted by Red, and they raise a glass to their shared appreciation. Phyllis overreacts with an agitated Kane after Holden makes an accusation, and the tension immediately becomes the centerpiece of a night that was supposed to be calm, light, and filled with the quiet joys of family and reconciliation. But as is always the case in Genoa City, peace never lasts long, and everything spirals into a new clash of egos, secrets, and unexpected alliances. Diane, meanwhile, is having a lovely Italian evening when Jack gets home, their domestic bliss a striking contrast to the chaos brewing elsewhere, and as he enters, he beams at the sight of her already setting the table with pasta, bruschetta, and a bottle of Tuscan wine, because she always knows what he needs without him asking, and this recognition fills him with gratitude, prompting him to kiss her with a sense of relief that despite the turbulence of his family and business, there is still one sanctuary in his life, and together they chat about Harrison's impending return from Milan, laughing about how the boy seems to have taken a shine to the accordion, of all instruments, a peculiar but endearing detail that reminds Jack of his own youth in Europe when everything felt wide open with possibility, and in this spirit he recites a few Italian proverbs about family and patience, drawing laughter from Diane, who teases that his accent is still terrible but his heart is in the right place, and in the glow of the moment they imagine a trip to Venice, the two of them walking through the Piazza San Marco, slow dancing to street musicians, and toasting beneath the moonlit canals, which prompts Jack to bring up his latest announcement, that Kyle and Claire intend to move in together, and Diane, with a spark of hope in her eyes, says this pleases her because she is certain the blonde will no longer want to interact so closely with her granddad Victor, whom she never trusted to begin with, and this small victory feels like proof that the family is stabilizing. But Jack, as always, tempers his optimism by complaining about Victor for a while, his voice rising as he warns that his old rival is constantly moving pieces around the chessboard, and Diane advises him to keep an eye not just on Victor but also on Kane Ashby, who has been lingering with a fixation that neither of them can quite pin down, and together they agree that they must ascertain the exact nature of his obsession before it morphs into something more dangerous. And in the end Jack reassures her that Ashby almost took Chancellor away from Nikki once but that they, at least, are safe from any hostile takeover for now, though he cannot shake the sense that Kane is maneuvering behind the scenes. Still, he softens the mood by turning the conversation to their postponed honeymoon, telling Diane that it doesn't matter where they go, Paris, Rome, or some secluded island, because as long as they are together, it will be the perfect trip, and with that they canoodle and kiss, sealing their moment of intimacy as the night grows darker and quieter around them, though Genoa City itself remains restless. Elsewhere, Claire thanks Tessa for the gelato at the Overlook, and the two young women bond over flavors and memories, though the sweetness quickly gives way to sorrow when they talk about Cole's passing, and inevitably the subject of Mariah surfaces, because for Tessa it is still an open wound that she hasn't fully healed, and Claire is stunned to hear that Tessa has moved out, no longer together with her wife, and she presses gently for details, though Tessa admits she doesn't know what Mariah did to drive them apart, only that something irreparable fractured between them. Claire, with her empathetic streak, offers to help with Aria, insisting she doesn't want to see Tessa endure this heartbreak alone, and in that moment Tessa confides that she has been receiving assistance but still feels the crushing weight of solitude, and when the conversation shifts to Kyle, Claire notes that he has finally returned from France, though somehow his absence only made things worse upon his return, and the two women decide that gelato isn't strong enough for this kind of night, agreeing to head to society for something more potent. At the same time, Holden provides Kane with an update on his real estate holdings while traveling by train, but their discussion becomes complicated once Holden disconnects and Daniel walks into society, overhearing enough to realize Holden has been conversing with Kane, and Daniel, still bruised by the past, cannot resist the jab, claiming he doesn't care who Holden hurts while climbing the ladder, since everyone in Kane's orbit seems to leave collateral damage behind, and soon they are arguing verbally about Ashby, with Daniel confessing in a rare moment of honesty that both he and Kane hurt Lily, their ex-wife, each in their own destructive way. Holden, uneasy, reveals he was recently rehired after a stint working for Kane under the name Dumas, a revelation that rattles Daniel, who learns in this tense exchange that Holden is trying to figure out his own place at the company and doesn't yet understand all the alliances at play, though he is certain Daniel knows Ashby far better than he ever could. Their mutual dislike softens slightly when the conversation drifts to the hardships of unemployment, and Holden admits he is hopeful this opportunity will help him fulfill his long-standing ambition, prompting Daniel to ask pointedly, "What's your goal?" which agitates Holden, who accuses him of digging into Kane's soil and prying where he doesn't belong, his paranoia flaring. Eventually Daniel calms him down, and Holden confesses he wants to open a club, a dream that suddenly makes Daniel grin, because Genoa City could indeed use another hotspot, and in that moment Holden sees in Daniel a potential ally, even a friend, especially when Daniel jokes about being his first lifelong buddy in town, though the mood shifts once more when Tessa and Claire walk in, and Holden immediately perks up, flirting as though his night has improved immeasurably. He orders a round of Vespers, the notoriously strong cocktail, and the group gathers at a table, with Claire and Daniel chit-chatting about Harrison's return and Summer's extended stay in Italy, while Daniel sneaks a private glance at Tessa, his eyes shimmering with the old affection he once buried, sparking a tension that Claire notices but doesn't yet name. As they choke down the potent drinks, Daniel offers Claire his condolences for Cole's death, which segues into Holden revealing that he buried his best friend that very day, making the entire group feel the shared weight of grief, and in the mournful atmosphere Tessa admits she may be nearing the end of her connection to Mariah, her so-called soulmate, while Daniel reflects on losing Heather earlier this year, layering the table with sorrowful admissions, and Claire does her best to reassure Holden, telling him he will find someone else to lean on, though his lingering gaze makes it clear he wants it to be her, adding yet another complication to the night's emotional entanglements. Meanwhile, Kane is on the train struggling to compose a text message to Matty and Charlie, asking for a chance to make things right, but the words feel insufficient, and before he can send it, Phyllis appears, brimming with energy and mischief, carrying a bottle of champagne to celebrate what she calls the coronation of Genoa City's new royalty, though Kane warns her sharply that it isn't a good time. But Phyllis, once in motion, is impossible to stop, the Phyllis Express thundering forward as she pops the cork and pours glasses, declaring she just saw Nick, who said the Newmans are terrified of Kane, a claim meant to boost his ego but which only irritates him further because he doesn't feel like celebrating anything. She pushes back, telling him she understands betrayal better than anyone, reminding him that she once faked her own death, so at least his crime was only pretending to be alive metaphorically, and she lifts her glass in a toast to children and their resilience, urging him simply to do better, words that sting but also inspire. Kane acknowledges they are alike in their impatience and their need to force outcomes rather than wait, and for a fleeting moment they find common ground, until Phyllis slips in the detail that she saw Lily earlier, a revelation that jolts Kane, who demands to know the specifics, his agitation growing by the second, and Phyllis admits she only wanted to lift his spirits after her encounter, sharing what she could to distract him from his gloom, but Kane, with his pride, tries to thank her formally, insisting she is not his partner nor his queen, reminding her that while they may share traits, they are not equals, a statement that should sting but instead intrigues Phyllis, who smirks and raises her glass once more to their shared stubbornness, the toast sealing a fragile, volatile bond that could either explode in betrayal or cement into an unlikely alliance. And as the train rattles on through the night, Kane stares at the message to his children, his heart heavy, while Phyllis leans back with her drink, already plotting her next move, blissfully unaware of just how much Holden's accusations and Daniel's warnings will soon unravel everything Ashby thinks he still controls. The train eventually slows as Kane stares at his unsent message to Matty and Charlie, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him like the evening darkness pressing against the window, and Phyllis, sensing his unease despite her champagne-induced bravado, leans in closer, her eyes glittering with a mix of mischief and concern, and she urges him to speak his truth to his children, but Kane, ever the strategist, hesitates, twisting his phone in his hands, trying to find the perfect phrasing that will make him look like the devoted father he wants to be while keeping his reputation intact. And just as he begins to type, his thoughts are interrupted by a notification from Holden, who has apparently been monitoring Kane's movements with a quiet, calculating intensity that Kane cannot shake off, and Holden's message is simple but loaded: "We need to talk, now." Kane's stomach tightens as he drafts a reply, knowing that Holden's idea of talking often comes with scrutiny, accusations, and veiled threats. And by the time the train reaches its next stop, Kane feels the weight of the evening compressing every nerve in his body, Phyllis leaning against him, her perfume a distracting mixture of floral and danger, insisting that he breathe, that he relax, that he let her handle some of the emotional heavy lifting, but Kane knows better, that this is his problem, and he must face it, or everything he has built will crumble. Meanwhile, back at society, Daniel sits with Tessa and Claire, the three of them still recovering from the potent vespers, their hands shaking slightly from the alcohol and the confessions of loss, and Daniel glances toward the door every few moments, as if expecting Holden to burst in, which he eventually does, striding in with an intensity that almost knocks over a waiter carrying a tray of desserts. And immediately Daniel feels the old tension flare. Holden's gaze locks on Daniel like a hawk on prey, and despite his earlier attempts to calm down, the raw edge of his anxiety returns, and he blurts out accusations about Kane, about manipulations, about everyone in town scheming under Ashby's shadow, and Daniel, weary but not intimidated, counters with pointed reminders of Holden's own recklessness, the harm he has caused Lily, the collateral damage left in the wake of his ambition, and Tessa, sensing the escalation, tries desperately to mediate, though her words are drowned out by the rising volume, the clatter of cutlery, and the background hum of society's late-night patrons, unaware of the private storm raging in their midst. Claire, her patience stretched thin but her loyalty unwavering, steps between the two men, placing a firm hand on Daniel's chest while holding out her other hand to Holden, who looks at her with a flicker of vulnerability hidden behind his defensive glare, and she insists that they sit, that they talk, that they remember why they are all here together in the first place. Yet the fragile calm only lasts for a moment, as Holden, his jaw tight, leans forward and admits that his real anger isn't just about Kane or Daniel, it's about feeling invisible in the chaos, about losing control, about witnessing Lily's heartbreak firsthand. And it all culminates in a tense silence that hangs over the table like a storm cloud, thick and suffocating. At the same time, Kane finally sends a hesitant text to Matty and Charlie, choosing words that are careful but heartfelt, expressing remorse and a desire to reconnect. Though he knows the words may not be enough, and he immediately regrets the brevity, wishing he could write a novel instead. And just as he hits send, Phyllis taps him on the shoulder, her expression half smug, half genuinely supportive, reminding him that action matters more than words, that showing up counts for everything. And despite himself, Kane feels a flicker of gratitude mixed with irritation, because while he appreciates her support, he cannot forget that she is unpredictable, that she operates on instinct, that her overzealous nature often complicates things instead of solving them. The memory of Nick's supposed terror of Kane, as Phyllis had mentioned, gnaws at him, and he wonders if the Newmans truly fear him or if Phyllis's mischief has colored his perception. And while Kane contemplates this, he cannot ignore the rising knot in his stomach, the sense that something larger is at play, something that will soon require every ounce of his cunning, patience, and charm to navigate, and he knows that the night is far from over. Meanwhile, Diane and Jack, still basking in the afterglow of their Italian evening, are interrupted by a call from Harrison, who has safely arrived home but sounds restless and unusually quiet, prompting Diane to worry that his time in Milan has changed him in subtle ways, and Jack reassures her that children often return from long trips with a new perspective, a different cadence in their lives, but Diane, intuitive and sensitive, cannot shake a nagging feeling that Harrison is hiding something small but significant, and they decide to plan a casual dinner with him the following evening to bridge the distance that travel has created, unaware that the emotional turbulence at society, on the train, and in various corners of the city will soon ripple through their own carefully maintained bubble of domestic calm, and that Kane's private struggles and Phyllis's relentless energy will intersect with their lives in ways that neither can anticipate. Back at society, Holden's agitation begins to manifest physically. He taps his fingers on the table, glares at Daniel, and alternates between confiding in Claire about his losses and issuing veiled warnings about Ashby's manipulations. And Daniel, ever the realist, reminds him that anger alone will not change the past, that focus and strategy must replace emotional outbursts. But Holden is not easily pacified. Not tonight, not with grief still raw and unprocessed. And Tessa, sensing the tension, tipping into open conflict, offers to step outside for air, pulling Claire along with her, leaving Daniel and Holden to simmer in the quiet aftermath of their confrontation, their eyes locked across the empty chairs, each silently calculating the next move, aware that in Genoa City, no interaction exists in isolation, and the consequences of a heated argument ripple outward to touch everyone, from Ashby on the train to Diane and Jack in their safe haven, to Tessa and Claire wandering in the chilly night air, still processing the flavors of gelato mingled with grief, a mix of sweet and bitter that mirrors the emotional chaos of their lives. Meanwhile, Kane, still on the train, battles his internal dialogue as Phyllis hovers, a relentless presence, insisting that he open up, that he let go, that he recognize the opportunity in the moment rather than allowing fear and caution to paralyze him. And while part of him wants to lash out, another part of him, quieter but more persistent, reminds him that Phyllis is right, action matters.